Imagine a place where wild beauty hides mysteries waiting in silence. The national parks of the United States are not just homes to incredible landscapes, they also hold secrets that even time can't solve. Deep in these wild lands, from the hot springs of Yellowstone, through the rain-soaked trees of Olympic, to the mist-covered heights of the Great Smoky Mountains, some of the bravest people vanished. Those who disappeared were not just visitors, they were park rangers. Experts, used to facing tough weather and daily risk, suddenly vanished, leaving behind confusing clues and lost belongings. Does it make you wonder what happened out there? These events warn us that America's wild places have their own rules that don't always make sense to us. If you get too close to these secrets, sometimes all that's left is a faded jacket caught on a branch, a haunted look in someone's eyes, or the echo of a frightened voice in the fog. Let these stories pull you in, one mystery at a time, and see if you can solve them. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy unraveling true stories. And now, let's step right into the heart of Yellowstone National Park, where every day brings new challenges and the unknown waits in the shadows. Every day in Yellowstone, park rangers test themselves against nature's challenges. The story of Jane Kelton, a ranger whose fate remains unsolved, is especially haunting. In June 1997, Jane, 34 years old, went on one of these routine tests and disappeared. She was last seen heading out as a storm rolled over the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. What lingered after her disappearance was a question that would puzzle everyone. Only one clue surfaced during days of searching footprints that wandered 5 miles away from any known trail. Why did she walk so far and leave the trail behind? And 2 years later, just when memory of the event began to fade, tourists stumbled upon her jacket hanging from a tree, over 15 miles from where the foot patrol had searched. Inside it, Jane's work plan for the day she was last seen. Each new clue only made things stranger. You have to ask yourself, would you keep searching after so many questions? Let's look closer at what really happened the day Jane vanished and see if anything about this mystery can be explained at all. Jane wasn't a ranger who filed paperwork behind a desk. She was a field ranger, one of the best. Every day she walked countless miles through Yellowstone, guiding tourists, studying wildlife, and keeping order even when the job was tough. At 34, Jane was fit and strong from all her work outdoors. She knew every corner of the park, especially the area around the Grand Canyon, as well as anyone could. Calm, careful, and professional, Jane avoided any kind of risk. She never broke rules or routines. She believed those rules kept rangers safe. The 12th of June in 1997 brought a typical start to the day-warm sun and familiar faces, though the forecast said storms would arrive by late afternoon. Around 3 in the afternoon, Jane radioed that she was heading out for a routine check of a trail hugging the northern rim of Yellowstone's Grand Canyon. This was not a busy trail for sightseers. Still, it was important. She needed to inspect for landslides and check for fallen trees. These things could make paths dangerous for others. Jane followed all the guidelines, letting base know exactly when she began her patrol. Not long after, at about 4:30 in the afternoon, nature's warning became real. The dark clouds rolled in, faster and darker than anyone expected. Within minutes, a major thunderstorm slammed into the canyon. Those who watched from distant overlooks would later say it was the worst storm they remembered. Thunder crashed across the gorge. Lightning hit the cliffs. Torrents of icy rain poured down. At the ranger base, the dispatcher scrambled to reach Jane and told her to find shelter right away. But the storm made it nearly impossible to talk on the radio. Static and buzzing filled the airwaves. The dispatcher could only make out a few words. "Seeking shelter by the rocks, I repeat." After that, only silence. No more messages came through. Imagine hearing that, then nothing at all. Would you be worried? Of course you would, because in the park, the weather can change everything in just a few seconds. The storm continued for about an hour before the sun finally returned. The dispatcher tried everything to reach Jane, but she did not respond. The park's emergency code went out immediately. When a ranger goes quiet after a storm in one of the most dangerous parts of the park, every minute counts. A search party left right away, but with the day almost at its end and the trails washed away, it was hard to make any progress. By daybreak, more rangers and volunteers joined the search. They covered every inch of the route Jane was supposed to have followed, looking under rock ledges in every hollow, any spot she might have hidden to escape the storm. But she was nowhere to be seen. On the second day, hope faded even more. One of the best trackers in the park found a series of footprints in the wet ground, about a mile away from Jane's planned route. They matched the hiking boots given to all rangers. This discovery was odd. The footprints did not go toward any trail or safe spot. Instead, they wandered more than 5 miles into the wild, rough part of the park, heading away from help. Even stranger, the footprints did not look panicked. The steps were even and calm, like Jane was walking with purpose, not running from something. Why would she head deeper into the wild, especially with bad weather all around? The search party followed those footprints. They wound through thick plants, crossed swollen streams, and climbed to a wooded ravine. In the mud, the tracks vanished. Would you keep following, or would you turn back, wondering what caused such a turn? The teams hunted the area around the ravine for days. They searched every hill, every clump of trees, but nothing turned up. No sign of Jane, no backpack, no extra clue. Weeks passed, and the search area grew wider, but the results remained the same. Jane Kelton was gone without a trace. The only thing left behind was the trail of footprints ending in nowhere. After a while, officials stopped the main search, and Jane's name joined the sad list of missing rangers in Yellowstone. Her story turned into a warning, a tale every new ranger would hear, reminding them that the wild always has the last word. For 2 years, her file sat on a shelf marked unsolved, no matter how many people hoped to find answers. Then, in the summer of 1999, everything changed. A family from another state was hiking a quiet path in the far north of Yellowstone, over 15 miles from where Jane's footprints ended. The landscape was different here, thick pine woods, not canyons. During a break, a teenage boy spotted something stuck up in a tree. When his dad helped get it down, they realized it was a ranger's uniform jacket. Time and weather had left it dirty and faded. The sleeve patch and name tag still survived, though. They read, Ranger J. Kelton. Realizing what they had found, the family hurried to the nearest ranger station. When the news reached the park leadership, Jane's case was opened again. The jacket was carefully examined, and inside a protected pocket, officers found a small notebook. The notebook's pages were damp from moisture, yet the pencil writing could still be read. There, on one of the pages, under the date June 12, 1997, was Jane Kelton's work plan for that very day. Handwriting experts quickly confirmed the notes belonged to Jane, leaving no doubt. Instead of answering the mystery, this discovery pushed it even deeper. Imagine finding a clue that raises more questions instead of solving anything. How did Jane's jacket end up 15 miles away, in a corner of the park nothing like where she vanished? There's no sensible way to explain an injured or lost person traveling such a distance through rough and shifting terrain. Another puzzle? Why was the jacket caught on a branch high up in a tree and not just dropped on the ground? It was as if someone had thrown the coat up there, or maybe it fell from above, landing in a place nobody could reach easily. This one clue pulled the mystery into a whole new direction. Right away, a big search effort started in the spot where the jacket turned up. More than a dozen people swept through every hollow, every cave, every dip and ridge in the woods for weeks. Despite all this effort, nobody found any bones, leftover supplies, or even the tiniest sign Jane Kelton had ever been in the area. Just like before, the case seemed to slam into a dead end. There was only that silent, haunting piece of evidence, her jacket. It was a last hello from Jane, a firm reminder she had truly been there once. Yet her coat gave hints that did not fit anything rational people expect, almost like the wild itself was hiding clues. Officially, Jane Kelton's story closed as unsolved. Unofficially, people crafted stories, some simple, some wild, about what might have happened. But facts stayed clear. She vanished during a thunderstorm. Her tracks went one way, but her jacket appeared years later, far off in another direction. Yellowstone seemed to be hiding something. This story grips anyone who visits the park. Yellowstone is more than mountains, rivers, and trees. It feels alive, with mysteries guarding their own rules. Not every rule makes sense to us, and sometimes when someone disappears, their path leads not to answers, but to bigger mysteries that can never quite be explained. Have you ever walked in a place that felt like something more than land? something that watches people come and go. Now let's leap to Washington State, to Olympic National Park. This place almost transports you to another time and world, far from city life. Giant trees wear moss like old coats. Ferns tower as tall as a person, and everywhere you look, the air is thick with fog. Here, even the quiet feels ancient. For some, this world is only a vacation. For James Reed, 41 years old, it was his job and his life. He was a park ranger trusted to keep hiking trails safe, always focused, always practical, never one to believe fairy tales. James trusted facts, the look of a muddy track, never just stories people told. Yet, as autumn began, a crack appeared in James's view of the world. One night, while on guard at a remote campsite, James stepped outside. In the weak circle of light right at the forest's edge, he spotted movement. It wasn't a bear or a deer. What he saw was tall, near 8 feet, a shadow on 2 legs covered by dark fur. It never acted wild or angry. It simply stood there watching him. James froze in place, trying to make out more details, but the figure stepped away so smoothly it made no sound, melting into darkness. Next morning, James shared his story with fellow rangers. Their reactions were classic, jokes about working too much, someone guessing it was just a bear on its hind legs. James tried convincing himself that's all it was, but the memory wouldn't go away. The picture of that huge, hairy silhouette, moving too smooth to be a bear, stuck in his mind. October soon brought a furious autumn storm. Rain poured, winds roared, and trees bent and fell. When skies finally settled, rangers got busy. Checking trails after any storm is crucial, so James and the staff went out to confirm hiking routes were safe. On October 4th, 2003, James was told to check the Cushman Lake route by himself, a routine task for such an experienced hand. At sunrise, he radioed his boss to say he'd started and planned to be back by 4 p.m. Around noon, he made contact again. James's voice was as calm as ever, mentioning downed trees but saying the trail looked okay. Nobody heard from him after that call. At 4 that afternoon, James failed to sign off. At 5, he never showed at his car parked by the trailhead. By 6, the sun was dipping and worry set in fast. His supervisor sounded the alarm right away. It wasn't like James to break rules or forget safety checks. He was respected for always following the handbook and keeping in touch. That same night, the first crew went out searching for him. By dawn, the full rescue effort was active. Rangers and volunteers hurried into the forest. The weather was still rough, mud everywhere, slippery slopes, fog sliding down the mountains. Luckily, James's boot tracks appeared quickly. The marks followed the route he'd been assigned to check. Searchers noticed spots where he paused, where he'd chopped a fallen tree. Everything looked like routine work, until 2 miles from the trail start, the tracks did something strange. They left the main hiking path and veered into untouched woods, right into a maze of downed trees. For everyone searching, that was their first alarm. James never left trails without good reason, but there was no sign of panic or trouble. Between the orderly stride and careful steps, it looked almost as though he'd just chosen a new direction. Clear-headed, rescuers followed the tracks, moving deeper into shadow where pine needles and wet leaves blanket the ground. Soon the tracks faded and vanished among the undergrowth. One day passed, then another, but nobody found James's backpack, his tools, or any clear clue. Everyone searching for him knew the woods well, and they knew James. The more days went by, the stronger the feeling grew that something made the forest different, almost stranger and colder than usual. The missing ranger wasn't just a routine search anymore. Something about the woods did not feel right. As tension rose, hope fell. On the third day, October 7th, a group of searchers forced their way into a hard-to-reach spot with layers of fallen trees. Suddenly, they heard a weak sound, a moan, just loud enough to notice. They headed toward the noise. In a hollow sheltered by moss at the base of a giant fallen cedar, they found James Reed. He was alive, sitting on the ground up against the big tree's trunk. His clothes were soaked and muddy, and he trembled violently. His vacant eyes stared through the group, showing no response to voices talking to him. While the medic quickly checked his health, the other rangers scanned the area for clues. Then just nearby, a new mystery appeared. Around the fallen cedar on wet ground covered with moss, they noticed a chain of giant footprints. Each massive track looked human, with 5 toes, a full arch, and a heavy heel, but they were nearly 18 inches long. The prints pressed deep, showing how heavy their maker must have been. The strange footprints formed an open circle around where James sat. Inside this ring of giant tracks, there was nothing else. No footprints from James, no animal trails disturbed the moss. Something huge had walked around him while he waited, then left him sitting alone in the middle of a quiet green clearing. James was quickly evacuated and rushed to hospital for treatment. His diagnosis was severe hypothermia and dehydration, topped with deep shock. Physically, apart from exhaustion, he had not suffered wounds or injury. But mentally he was lost. When James finally woke up enough to speak, a detail surfaced that made his story even stranger. He remembered nothing about the past 3 days. His mind drew a blank after stepping out of his car at the trailhead on the morning of October 4th. Then suddenly memories picked up again under the bright lights of the hospital. 3 entire days lost in the forest, all erased. The official investigation hit a wall. They had a survivor but no answers. There were photos and plaster molds of giant footprints, too large to belong to any animal known to science. Yet, the final written report explained everything as an accident, disorientation and temporary memory loss caused by hypothermia. No mention of the massive prints was made. Those tracks remained only in private park files and in the minds of the rescue team who saw them. James Reed could not recall a single detail about his lost days. After a long stay in recovery, he left his job and moved far away. The forest was no longer just a workplace or a home. It was the place where part of his life had vanished, where memories were stolen by something unknown. The strangeness of this story comes from its ending. James survived, but he brought back only haunting questions. What force could terrify a person so deeply they forget themselves? Was it the creature whose shadow James saw in the camplight? Did it let him go, or was it simply indifferent to his suffering? James returned to his daily life, changed forever. A part of him stayed in the mossy ring, locked with a secret his own mind would never reveal. Would you ever want to walk those woods again, knowing a piece of you might never come back? The Great Smoky Mountains rise from the land wearing their famous blanket of fog, which can turn the world gray and silent in minutes. For all who work in these forests, the fog is a constant, silent danger. In March 2010, park employee Emily Hopkins, age 27, was caught in a fog so thick she seemed to vanish from the earth. When search teams later found her flashlight and folded map placed neatly on the trail, they thought a solution was near. But Emily herself was never seen again. The scariest detail, after the search ended, tourists reported hearing a woman's scream echoing from the deep woods. The voice sounded very real. Emily Hopkins was not a casual visitor. For her, the mountains were a passion and a legacy. At 27, she joined a seasonal maintenance crew to help clear trails and keep them safe. She didn't just love her work, it was part of her personality. Emily was strong, knew the land well, and always followed safety procedures. She was new to the job, but this was already her 3rd season working here. On March 18, 2010, Emily was sent to clean up a stretch of trail in the area around Clingman's Dome, all alone. That high point in Tennessee is loved for its amazing views and unpredictable weather. The month of March was off-season here. Sun and snow could swap places in just an hour. But Emily was ready for all this. She registered her route that morning, checked out a radio, and set up her communication schedule before heading out. Her first check-ins at 11 o'clock, 1 and 3 in the afternoon went perfectly. Emily described her exact location, the debris she had cleared, and her progress. Her voice came through the speaker, bright and matter-of-fact. But after 3 p.m., weather on the summit changed rapidly. Cold, thick fog began crawling up from the valleys, covering everything in its path. This kind of fog was not uncommon, but its speed that day was alarming. Visibility dropped close to 0. In her last radio message, Emily reported on the creeping fog and said she was finishing her task and beginning to head back toward her starting point. No panic, just the voice of someone who knew what to expect. Her next scheduled radio contact was set for 5 p.m. The dispatcher tried to reach her, but only blank static echoed from the speaker. He tried again, cranking up the volume, but still nothing. In such moments, everyone follows a standard procedure. Wait, try again after 15 minutes. But none of the dispatcher's calls reached Emily as dusk settled in. Concern quickly grew. Emily was missing, alone, in freezing fog. and at a high altitude where cold can be deadly. Immediate action was needed. The first search group was a team of rangers already nearby. They hurried out, their progress slow. Fog forced them to crawl, flashlights rendered useless against the thick white curtain. Rescue efforts became risky for everyone involved. By dawn, the regular search expanded, with volunteers joining the rangers. The fog had lifted a little, but still clung in patches to rocky gorges and forests. Together, searchers formed a line, moving slowly forward, checking every section of ground. Everyone realized they were fighting against time itself. If someone spent even one night in this valley without warm gear, the danger of hypothermia was high. The challenge grew hard fast. 2 days of searching led nowhere. There were no lost pieces of clothing, no footprints in the mud, nothing at all. The terrain was difficult, with sharp slopes, rocks, and tangle-thick undergrowth. But on the third day, hope sparked briefly. One team, retracing Emily's work area, made a shocking discovery. Right on the trail, in perfect order, lay 2 items: a small LED flashlight and a map folded tight. They rested side by side, not tossed or scattered, but arranged almost as if placed purposefully. No sign of a fall, no drag marks, nothing violent. No blood, no struggling footprints. The only thing the searchers found were objects completely necessary for survival in thick fog at dusk. Why would anyone facing such conditions leave both their only light and map right on the trail, then walk away? It did not seem accidental. If Emily had slipped off the trail, her things would probably have fallen with her or landed apart from each other. It didn't seem like a frightened person running from a wild animal. If Emily had been escaping quickly, she'd likely have dropped more things. Her backpack would have been there too. But only her flashlight and map were left, placed together. It was as if she had paused, set those 2 things down neatly on the trail, and calmly walked off into the dark, thick forest. Why would someone do this? This strange detail didn't bring any answers, only raised new, troubling questions that kept everyone guessing. Finding the flashlight and map made rescuers focus all their search around this spot. They thought Emily might have stepped off the trail for some unknown reason right here. Special search teams arrived with dogs, hoping the animals could catch any trace of her, but the weather turned against them. The air was so wet, and too much time had passed, so the dogs could not find a clear scent. They acted uneasy but never led anyone in a strong direction. Rescue teams worked hard. They combed every slope and checked every deep crack in the ground. Inch by inch, they searched for any sign. Yet Emily seemed to have simply disappeared. There weren't any other things left behind. No gloves, no hat, and nothing else at all. Days slipped by, each one without progress. Over 100 people joined in, and even a helicopter searched the area whenever the fog lifted for a bit. It all led to nothing. 10 days after Emily vanished, park officials had to decide. The weather made hope too slim, and protocol said there was little chance of finding her alive. The big search stopped. This is always the hardest decision, but in a giant wilderness, rescuers can't search forever. Emily's case was changed to missing, presumed dead. Small teams of rangers kept checking the area for weeks, no longer hoping to rescue her, just watching for some random clue. Then something strange happened, adding even more mystery. A few days after the main search was over, when most rescuers had left, a new report added to the confusion. On a weekend, a couple hiking far below Emily's trail stopped on their way back. From deep in the forest near Klingman's Dome, they heard a clear female scream. It wasn't happy or surprised. It sounded like terror or pain. The noise was sharp, sudden, and ended as quickly as it began. The couple froze, listening as silence returned, only to hear the scream again a minute later. They hurried to the nearest ranger station to report exactly what they'd heard. This report was taken seriously by the park staff, though there was not much anyone could do. Could they search a huge area just from 2 screams? Still, a few rangers went out, but they found nothing. The event was logged, not dismissed as a mistake, nor blamed on an animal to be safe. 2 days later, a second report arrived. Another group of hikers, in a different location but still close to Klingman's Dome, heard another lonely, desperate scream. Both reports matched, even though they came from different places. These disturbing sounds became part of the last and most mysterious chapter in Emily Hopkins' story. Emily was never found. Not that spring, not in the years after. She simply vanished from the park, leaving behind just questions. The official answer says she got lost in the fog and died of cold, her body lost somewhere nobody could reach. But this doesn't explain why her flashlight and map were left together so carefully on the trail. It certainly doesn't explain the strange cries heard days after she was gone. Was Emily still alive, calling for help somehow after almost 2 weeks alone in the forest? Or if she could still scream, why couldn't hundreds of rescuers find her at all? If it wasn't Emily's voice, then who was screaming in the woods? The story of Emily Hopkins is all mystery. She became another lost figure in the Great Smoky Mountains, and a reminder that the fog there covers more than stones and trees. Sometimes it covers the answers to the scariest mysteries, only allowing their desperate echoes to be heard by those who listen carefully.